question sheet. Get the hard questions out.
Oh. Don't worry, they're going to ask the same questions. They don't have an extra set just for you.
I was afraid a couple of them up there might come up with
Now,
some
I
hard
can't
ones for me.
I can't guarantee what's going to happen once we get started. All right.
It'll all be good.
Well, Dr. Newman, thank you for being here. I was just telling her it has to be miserable to have to do it, your interview at this time of day, waiting for it to roll around. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. You know who all of us are. I don't know if you've met Veronica Watson, our new
Hi,
student
Veronica.
liaison.
Nice to have you with us. Nice to meet you.
I'm just going to go ahead and let you get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started with the questions.
Okay. Well, I'm Myra Newman, and we were privileged to move to Elizabethton in 2005. But the reason we moved to Elizabethton was because my husband accepted a position as a youth minister at Calvary Baptist Church, and now he is the associate pastor and youth minister there. So we have an opportunity to serve our community. That's one of the reasons why we moved to Elizabethton, was to serve in our community, to live in the community in which we serve. So we have an opportunity in that capacity to serve our senior adults and our youth in our church, and in other ways to help our community. We do service projects within our youth group, which we help with a Coalition for Kids, the TLC program, Kids Like Us, and different things. So we have an opportunity to get out and to work in our community and to help our community to be better. So I have married to Mark Newman, and I have two children, Michaela, who graduated from Elizabethton High School in 2016, and then Craig, who is an upcoming senior, so he'll graduate in 2021. So we're excited about this coming school year and it being his senior year.
Well, we're just going to go ahead and get started. So describe what you do in your current position on a daily basis. Now, what specifics of this role do you enjoy the most and the least?
Okay, my title is Deputy Director of Schools, and I serve as one of the designees for the Director of Schools. I support our K-12 curriculum and a little bit of data and testing for the elementary. I manage the portfolio for our pre-K, K, and 1, and support our teachers with submitting their portfolios. I coach our elementary principals. I think that's one of the things I've enjoyed the most, is get to meet with them monthly and set goals and then progress monitor those goals throughout the year. It's given me an opportunity to really get to know our principals and to work with them and to move our schools forward. I help with textbook adoption, and that's given me opportunity to work with our teachers, professional development, and that has allowed me through our literacy learning walks and our math learning walks to be able to get into our classrooms and observe what our teachers are doing, to see the high quality instruction that's happening and how our students are meeting those expectations as we move forward, and things that we need to change, things we don't need to change, so where our strengths are. So that's really given some insights into our instruction and where our strengths and weaknesses are. So that's been very fun.
Is there any part of it that you find is like least enjoyable?
I'm a worker, so not much of it's not enjoyable. I guess some of the things that are a little difficult are when you have parents or that call and complain, or that's never fun, but it's part of the job, so you do it and you move forward.
Do you have any questions? How are the portfolios? I know the first couple of years that was pretty rough. Have that settled into something that everybody's starting to, like, with the state? Are the bugs getting worked out? Maybe that's what I'm trying to ask.
Well, it's actually changing. This coming year, we're doing a pilot where our pre-K and our K can do an assessment. It's called the ESGI. So they'll be doing an assessment instead of portfolios. Our first grade has decided to go ahead and do the portfolios instead of taking their school level TBOS score. So we have first grade still doing portfolios, and then pre-K and K that will do the assessment this year for the first time.
And you said we're doing that as a pilot program?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, it's across the state.
Fantastic. All right. So the director of schools is undeniably the leader of the system. Define what leadership and integrity mean to you?
I see myself as a servant leader. I think that's how we move forward, is to serve others and to show that model as a leader and how we meet the needs of others. So leadership it helps to be transformational so that you can make the changes that need to be made and to model those changes throughout so that others can see that it's not just them that we're asking to change, but it's all of us that are having to change and move forward. And the last part of the question again, would you mind?
Just the word integrity.
Integrity. I think integrity is very important, and being in the public eye, even through our church, it's important that I have that integrity in our school system and in our church community. In our community, it should all be the same, and how I respond, how I act, my treatment of people should all model what Christ should do.
Anybody have any follow-ups?
So could you kind of just define it, what you think integrity means just a little bit more to you? Like, so you say that it's important to have integrity, but what is integrity?
Integrity is being the same no matter where you're at, and having the same answer, having the same response, having just being able to follow the law no matter where you're at. If I'm here in Tennessee, I'll have the same response as I would on vacation in another spot.
Okay, thank you.
So in a perfect world, directors of schools would never have to make an unpopular decision. We do not live in a perfect world. So tell us about a time you needed to make a difficult decision as an administrator, and explain your decision-making process when going through those decisions.
I think one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make was probably to let a teacher go as I was a principal. And going through the evaluation process, providing the supports that I felt like was needed, coming up with a plan. It was not just an immediate dismissal. It was that we worked on a plan throughout a whole year to support that teacher, and at the end of the year we had to make a decision. So some of those things are one of the most difficult is when you deal with personnel. And but I think you have to give an opportunity for improvement and to make a plan and to reflect on your decisions if it was a right decision afterwards so that you can make some adjustments later on.
So, as in these hard decisions, there's lots of influences that are going to try to sway your opinions. So, between like students and teachers and community members, I just kind of wanted to know if you put any more value on one than the other, or how you would just take in all of these influences into your decision-making process.
Sure. I think student voice is important, but also teacher and staff voice is important in the community. And I think it's important for us to listen to all of those aspects and all of those opinions and to make an informed decision. Don't think you can listen to one voice over the other. It has to be, in order to be the best decision for our community, for our school system, that we have to know all aspects of what we're making our decision around. And sometimes, you have to bring other people in, like our team, our supervisor team, our administrators and principals, and maybe parents, to make sure that we make the best decision for our system.
Thank you.
Well, one of the best things about our community is we're all very invested in this system, and a lot of times when decisions are unpopular, this room gets very full. So the person sitting here is the person that everyone's kind of upset with and angry with. So if you're sitting here, how will you handle when times occur that people are upset?
Well, it just depends on what the decision or what the item is up for discussion. So, you know, if you can answer immediately, then yes, I think that's appropriate. But if you don't have all the information, I think it's important to gather that information before you make a statement or before you make an opinion or a decision. So talking with others first, investigating first before we make a public statement or a decision about something.
Anybody else? So have you personally been involved in setting our school budget for the year, either here or in your previous school systems you've worked for? And have you had the opportunity to work with the local funding body to secure funds needed?
I have not had an opportunity to work with a government to secure funds for like a local government, but I have written several grants that have been funded. So that's working with outside agencies to fund those grants. I have worked with our special ed budget and worked with a consolidated plan so that we can have our federal budget, and worked with Mr. Hutchins on that in a previous capacity. And then as a school principal, I was able to work with our school budget that was allocated to us to set those budgets. And one of the things that I look at as setting those budgets is what is our needs, what are our priority needs, and setting those resources, what we can, to our needs.
Anybody got anything on this one?
I noticed, I mean, there's another part to that question, and
Sorry.
I don't know
I
if
didn't
that's just
ask-
something we're not.
Well, I didn't have time the first one, so
Gotcha.
you're welcome to bring that up if you want to, but since I didn't get to ask that first person, I haven't brought that up, but it's there if you want to.
I mean, I'll ask it,
Okay.
yeah. Just as we're heading into the new school year, unknowns of BEP, explain what criteria you would use to decide where needed cuts to the budget may need to be done.
Okay, it's interesting that you've asked that, since we are working on our task force for reopening and looking at different scenarios. And last week I had the opportunity to sit in on the director of schools supervisor or superintendent study council call, and budget was one of the things that they were very concerned about due to, if we don't reopen, how is that going to affect the sales tax and BEP? Are we going to lose students based off of students not wanting to return and go to homeschool, and how are we going to ensure that we meet the needs of our students so that we can support them and meet their needs here instead of going to homeschool? Because if we lose students, then we lose money as well. So those things are very prominent and on people's minds. But looking at the budget, I think you have to look to see what stage are we in on reopening. Are we reopening remotely? And if that's the case, then we may need the budget in technology, and we may have to take it from another area, like maintenance or other areas that if our buildings are not being used. So it really depends on what aspect, what kind of reopening that we are in, and how can we adjust. But overall, I think that's budget is something that we're going to have to look at deeply to know how to manage that, because we have so many unknowns at this time.
Absent any guidelines that are directives from the government or any other bodies regarding reopening, knowing what you know today, which is what we don't know, what would you, how would you guide us through the coronavirus pandemic here?
We started on that last week, actually. We developed a task force with our principals and some teachers within our system, and we met. We pulled in Ms. Isaacs and Ms. Wilson to support us, because feeding is going to be an important part no matter how we reopen. We are also pulling in our attendance person so that we all know if we are reopening remotely, how are we going to take attendance, so that we can make sure that we have the ADM that we need to help with our BEP. So we are looking at all aspects. The LEA guide the state put out is very overwhelming. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but there's no way we can come up with a plan for every situation they have in that guide. And we're still waiting on toolkits from the State Department to help guide us through that process. But what we have focused on in our task force is 3 scenarios. One is full opening, and maybe with some social distancing if we need to, if that's required. And then also until maybe at a blended type of reopening, or even if we start school full and then have to close down or close partial down, how are we going to meet those students' needs that are quarantined? And then remote learning. And if that's the case, if we start back full force and then in 2 months we have to close down, how are we going to continue our learning for our students and instruction? So that's where we're directing right now.
So in other words, clear as mud.
Yes.
So if you are tasked with the Director of Schools position for Elizabethton, what types of people will you need to build your support team to help you become a successful Director of Schools?
In interviewing for teachers, I always looked for teachers that were coachable and moldable, and that were able to adjust and be flexible and to come together and to work as a team and to collaborate. So I think it's important to have those types of people around us. As a director of schools, I feel like I need to have people smarter than me so that we can work together and to build a plan and for our school system to support our students and to support our teachers as we continue in the drive to make our school the best it can be.
Let everybody finish taking notes and see if they got any more thoughts. I don't want to move too fast.
It's a little off that, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about your psychology background, school counseling, and the need for the services within our school. Can you comment at all on that with
Yes.
regard to surrounding yourself and building a support team?
Sure. As a school psychologist, my job was not as a counselor, but as more of a diagnostician, or to diagnose or to certify students with special needs. And so I did a lot of IQ testing and achievement testing to meet the criteria, and training for children with autism and other trainings to meet students' needs within our school system and in the gen ed classroom. But moving forward with the things that are currently happening in our society and our world with COVID and some of the racial tensions that are going on, we see a great need for counseling and support for our students in mental health counseling. Last year we were able to add a mental health counselor, so each of our schools have a counselor or 2, and then we have the mental health counselor that is supporting our students at the middle school and high school. And our goal through our CARES fund is to add a second counselor, second mental health counselor through Frontier Health to support our elementary students in schools there. So we do see it as a great need to meet those mental health and counseling services for our students.
Okay, and kind of along those lines, you mentioned, doing the testing for IQ and that sort of thing. We have seemingly had good results with our kids who needed additional help, special needs, and those sorts of things. But one of the special needs we haven't always talked about is those who are gifted. Are you familiar with what we would do what you would do as a director in regards to address that issue for Elizabethton?
Yes, and I know that's something that we have been working on the last couple of years, is to have, to be able to get people certified in our schools, at least one person in each of our schools certified as gifted, so that they can serve students better who are identified as gifted. At the high school, it may not be as difficult because we have AP classes and we have honors classes. We have other things that they can reach out. They can do dual enrollment, dual enrollment to meet some of those needs and to push their education at the elementary, and at the middle school it's a little bit more difficult. Right now we do have a great program going on at our middle school. We have a teacher that's really jumped on board on that, and she has taken our students who are identified as gifted to NASA and special trips like that to promote their learning. So it is an area that we have been working on and pushing forward.
Okay.
I'm just curious
Sure.
myself. When did that happen? Because I was identified as gifted at a very young age, and I've not had the best
Yeah.
experience. I was wondering with that.
It's just been in the last couple of years. The middle school, I believe, started last year.
Okay, wow. Thank you.
And no, you can't go back to elementary school.
I know.
Sorry.
And
We'll keep you a little longer.
Our goal is to look at each student and their individual needs. So we have one student who's in middle school who will be taking some courses at the high school next year. So it's just based off their individual need and what they need.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. So tell us about a time you failed at something as a leader. How did you handle it? What did you learn? And how would you handle that situation now?
There's probably too many to tell you. And I think that's how we learn, is through failure. And you keep pushing forward. It's something that, even a comment that you make can be considered a failure, but you learn from it and you push forward and you learn to change your behaviors, or you change your decision-making process, and then you move forward. It's a learning process. So it's kind of hard to think of just one right now that I can expound on, but I think during a day you may fail at something, but you also succeed at something, but you learn from it and you move forward.
This is off the cuff. I know you've done a lot of things, okay, and worn a lot of hats even since you've been here. Where do you feel like you're strongest? I've never asked you that. I'm just curious. Your strongest area or areas would be?
I believe I can tell you the area that I have that gives me more excitement and more pleasure is coaching others and seeing them succeed. That has been some of the best experiences that I've had. Even our students, seeing our working with our students with autism and seeing a nonverbal student say her name for the first time, seeing other kids succeed, seeing our teachers succeed, seeing our administrators succeed and celebrating with them, and just to being a little part of that. I think that's probably something that I'm very passionate about and receive the most blessing from.
Going back to the about the failure. So I know that you have value in failure and embrace it, but some other people might not, because it's systemically and societally not as accepted. So how would you work with people who have a harder time with failure?
Sure. And I think that's something that we have to work with, even with our students, is to have that growth mindset. Mm-hmm. That at first you don't succeed, but you push forward to master a skill or a standard, or and even with adults, we have to push forward and learn from our mistakes, and learn from if we do not succeed at first on a test or a skill, that we have another opportunity to master that skill or that test. So it's more of a growth mindset that we have to be able to show that it's valuable, mm-hmm. and that we value it, and that's what we expect, that not everyone's going to succeed the first time.
Thank you.
You said coaching others is where you find your joy, and then gave examples of where you found joy came from seeing the fruits of your labor, where you saw those succeed. Where's a tangible example that we would be able to recognize where you saw maybe your efforts of coaching or otherwise help your administrators succeed?
Sure. The most recent example I can give you is working with Mr. Hurley at Eastside and through the coaching process and setting goals and setting, he came to me in the summer last year and we sat down, we made a plan. We made a plan for his teachers. We made a plan for how he was going to monitor that plan and to monitor progress throughout. That's what our coaching sessions focused on throughout the year. And at the end of that year, they were rewarded the reward school status from the state. So I think that's some of the fruits of my labors and mostly Mr. Hurley's labors.
That's very humble. That's good.
Well, the last question is going to be posed by Veronica.
So, as the student liaison, it is my job to speak on behalf of the students and voice their concerns to the board and also ensure that their voices are heard. With this in mind, I would like to know, in what ways will you value and honor student voice as the superintendent?
I think student voice is very important, and that's why we're here, is for our students. If we didn't have students, we wouldn't have a school. So we need to listen to our students and to know what they value, what they seek, what their needs are, and not only at the high school, but the middle school and the elementary level as well. And sometimes we have to do that through surveys. Sometimes it's sitting down and speaking with students. I have the opportunity to do that in our community as well. I pick the students' brains at my church a lot to tell me what you think about this. So sometimes they don't think I'm listening, but I am. But I think it's very important for us to listen and to consider and to take all those facts with us as we make decisions.
Thank you.
Mark Newman, just one question from me, if you don't mind. Again, you're an elementary principal.
Yes, sir.
Haven't served in that facility, in that position at a high school or anything like that. What will you do to ensure, as director, that you know what the high school needs and make sure we meet our goals and stuff at the high school? How will you handle that to learn about the high school?
I could tell you an example. Would that give?
That's fine.
Okay. So through our district planning, improvement planning, we noticed that our math scores at the high school were not where they should be. We saw a significant dip in our scores from the middle school, from 8th grade to the high school to Algebra 1. And so we were able to take that data to the high school and meet with the leadership team there and to check on even our textbooks and materials that we're using. We found out that we have not adopted math materials since 2012, and they are out of date. They do not meet the standards. Our teachers are not using them, so they are pulling resources from on their own. And so we need to, as a district, be able to supply our teachers with what they need to instruct our kids. So I think it's our goal to dig deep, to know why, what's the root cause of what our data is saying, so that we can meet the needs and support our teachers, support our students, and to give our students the best education that we can. So it's my responsibility to know the data and what the data is saying, so that we can support others and move our school.
Thank you.
Anybody else have?
Well,
Go ahead.
What would you consider your greatest asset that you would bring to Elizabethton City Schools? And I'm going to follow it up with liability, so be thinking.
I think the greatest asset that I have is my ability to relate with others and to speak and to listen and to actively listen. I take criticism pretty well. No one likes criticism, but I take it, and it's a platform for me to improve upon and to make improvements. So I think our relationship building, though, is one of the greatest assets that I could bring.
How about liability? Everybody comes with both.
I know, yes.
It's a balance sheet of life.
it's a little more difficult because I know there are liabilities, and maybe it's that I want to hear all the facts before I make a decision, and sometimes it may be slower to make a decision, but I want to make sure that I have all the facts first before I do.
Good. Thank you.
Any questions for us? You guys have any more little questions rattle around in your brains? Because now's your shot. Thank you so much. We're going to let you visit with the folks that are here and appreciate you. Now go
you.
home
Now I
and
can
enjoy the rest of
relax.
you can relax, throw your shoes off and relax.
It is, because people don't think
I had in my car. I forgot to bring one with me, so. Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Well, first of all, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for making the trip up to join us. I'm going to have the board introduce themselves, and then I will let you get started and introduce yourself. So, Phil, let's start with you.
Phil Isaacs.
Eddie Pless.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Grover May.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Danny Oakwind. Nice to meet you.
I'm Veronica Watson, and I'm the student liaison.
Thanks for being here.
So we talked earlier, so again, I'm Rita. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Miles Hebrard, and I come from Knoxville, Tennessee. We're currently in Oak Ridge, and I'll explain more about my experience here in a few minutes. But my wife, Amy, and I have been married almost 12 years. So she works at the vet hospital there at University of Tennessee. And I have 2 children. They are 7 and 9, getting ready to start 2nd and 4th grade. And they are currently in Florida, where I flew up from there yesterday morning to be able to join you all today. So I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. I'm both honored and humbled for the opportunity to be able to come back to Elizabethton City Schools and interview for your Director of Schools position today.
Thank you. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So describe what you do in your current position, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and what aspects of this role do you enjoy the most and the least?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Ms. Boer. So I started my career in 2000 when I moved to Tennessee and went to the University of Tennessee to get my education degree. I got both my master's and my EDS there, and I was a teacher for 5 years, started in 8th grade algebra, and then moved to pre-engineering. So I love the CTE aspect, and I love that all children wanted to participate in my classroom. It was an opportunity. Everything we built, we blew up. So obviously, I had a lot of fans, and of course, the teachers would send me all the behavior problems. From there, I was called to the superintendent's office and asked to become principal of the largest elementary school, which was a Title I school there in Anderson County. And one of the things they needed was a community person. And something I did, and something you heard the last time I interviewed, was I had a Hawks Helping Others, an extreme makeover program. One of my strengths is a community uniter, and I love just trying to unite community and get kids involved. It's not about me. It's never going to be about me. This is about students and building that foundation. And so I took on Claxton Elementary School for 7 years and could have stayed longer, obviously, because they needed somebody that I was the 6th principal in 6 years. And so they had a lot of turnover. And so I understand what that feels like to a community when you feel like that there is a lot of transition and a lot of turnover. We went in there and we built students' lives. This is not a career, this is not a job, this is a life calling when you get into education. And obviously, when I came to Tennessee in 2000, I understood that when I went to get my degree. Currently, I serve for Oak Ridge Schools. I'm supervisor of special education. It is me and my secretary, and so sometimes some people, I know I'm next to Knox County, so they say, okay, is there a director above you or an executive director above you? No, it's me and my secretary. We field all the calls, I have to help with compliance, I have to help with the academic side, I have to deal with the discipline side when we start talking about students with disabilities. I serve each day. One of my guidelines is you show up, and then you work hard and you do it right the first time, even when nobody is looking. And when you get knocked down, you get back up. So I love that little quote, when you get knocked down 8 times, get up 9. I serve students, I serve staff, and I serve a community. That's who I am as a supervisor of special education. I'm very visible, I'm very accessible. The school board chair in Oak Ridge, he has a relationship with all the realtors in the city, because obviously we're trying to recruit everybody to move to Oak Ridge and not Knox County. We compete with Farragut, Hardin Valley, Maryville, Alcoa, right there on the Pellissippi on that technology corridor. And so when he finds out that there's a child with an IEP or a child with a disability, he will have them reach out to me and call me. And so I become a recruiter to be able to come to our city and be able to share what programming that we are going to provide for their child if they so choose to move into the Oak Ridge city limits or pay tuition, as you all have as well. And so I also am a chief recruiter. I steal people out of Knox County and all the surrounding counties. That's what I do for Oak Ridge. Because I want the best. We want the best for Oak Ridge schools. To come to Oak Ridge schools, there's a high expectation, there's a high standard, and I was blessed and honored when they asked me to move from Anderson County schools over to Oak Ridge City Schools because of the work I did as a teacher and as an administrator. And so I've been fortunate, I've been blessed for the past 17 years. I'm getting ready to begin year 18. So when I come here today, I didn't come here as looking at it as a stepping stone. I'm only on year 18. I've got a long ways to go. Again, this is a life calling, and I look forward to being able to serve as your next director of schools.
How many, I know that with special ed, that's overwhelming. How many teachers do you have work under you, and how many students do you have?
I currently have over 900 students on IEPs. And of course, that transitions, month to month, sometimes day to day, because we are next to Knox County. And so as housing developments or as people can't afford rent or as they get kicked out of certain places, those IEPs transition. So I'm charged with a difficult task sometimes of being the biggest cheerleader. And I expect there'll probably be a question on COVID-19, so I'll save my biggest cheerleader aspect for that side. But I've got to cheer on my staff and my administrators who, when somebody shows up with an IEP and they seem very difficult or it seems very challenging via paper, you can be one thing on paper, but until you meet somebody, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to fly in and be here today instead of being Zoom, because you can be one thing on paper or on a video and have all your notes sitting in front of you or around you or your scripts or somebody else even talking in your ear, I don't know. But to actually meet the child and to meet the family, it's about relationships. And when you meet the family and you share with them some of your philosophy or the programming that goes on within your schools, and you talk about your 4 elementary schools or your two middle schools or the great high school that Oak Ridge Schools has, you begin talking about how we're going to serve your child. Again, this isn't about me. I'm not disappointed that you found Oak Ridge Schools or that you're coming to my school system. I'm excited that you came to my school system because you know what? I want your child to come through this school system because I know that they're going to get a great foundation and I know that they're going to get a great education so that when they graduate with a diploma, one of the 4, but when they graduate with a diploma, they're going to walk out with some skills that is going to give them the best shot at being successful and being an independent citizen one day. So I have 88 total staff that I supervise. So roughly, you're looking at probably 55 to 60 teachers and 28 to 33 TAs. So that's very important, having that support in those classrooms. I currently do not have any one-to-ones. That's probably one of the biggest challenges that I get when somebody moves here is what happened in another system or what happened in another state. I get all the time, I get the question, can my child have a one-to-one? And I ask them, why would we disable them more? Or why are we going to enable them? Do you go to the bathroom with them? Do you go to bed with them? Do you sit 24 hours a day with that particular child? Do I have some hard children? Absolutely. I've got some emotionally disturbed children. I've also got some with that are so medically fragile they can't even return to school or come into our school building. We build programs for those students because it's so important that they are treated as an individual and that they are counted as that all means all and that every student has a chance to be successful in Oak Ridge Schools.
So the director of schools is undeniably the leader of the system. Define what leadership and integrity mean to you. Leadership is a calling. If you choose to get into an opportunity where you get to lead, and again, I started this career and this passion of mine as a teacher, and I'll be honest, I had it easy when I left. After 5 years, I left them a ton of money. I had a program that got national recognition, and the superintendent said, I want you to go lead a building. I was the youngest principal at that time. There was teachers in that building that had more years of experience than I was years old. And people were like, are you crazy? How are you going to go in and do that? And what it is about, it's about relationships.
I went in and forged that very quickly, because the first thing that I asked for when I became a principal and when I became a supervisor of special education is I went and met with the former principal. I went and met with the former director of special education. And I would do that with Dr. Gardenauer as well, if I'm selected as your candidate. I then asked the secretary, because if there's somebody that you better build the best relationship with, it's the person that that's going to house your phone calls, whether it comes to you or doesn't come to you. And then the next people that you better forge relationships with are the people who clean, the people who cook, and the people who drive buses, along with the board, who's obviously, you're the one hiring me, so I've got to treat you well as well. So I asked the secretary, I need everybody's phone number. And that was both for Claxton Elementary and for Oak Ridge Schools as an entire system. And over the summer, I called every one of my staff, both times. I did that 2 times. And I reached out, again, trying to build that relationship before some of them ever knew me. Some people obviously knew me because of the newspaper articles or the things that were on the news for all the extreme makeovers and the service learning aspects. But I was share that gave me an opportunity, whether it was 2 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour, it gave me an opportunity to understand and to listen. And that's one of my guiding principles as well, is listen. Covey would say at first, seek to understand before being understood. And you talk about an opportunity to be able to forge and build a relationship, it's opening your ears and just listening. And I wouldn't even ask them, like, what's wrong with the school? What's wrong with the system? What would you change? I'll do that later. That's an opportunity for another time. This was about your family. I called people, they were on vacation. I called people who were in the middle of divorces or having children, not necessarily in the hospital at that moment, but they had their own struggles. We all have our battles and challenges. And I understand that, but I also wanted them to know that, listen, I look forward to working with you. I look forward to serving with you. I look forward to helping you overcome obstacles. And that's one of the great things as a supervisor of special education. I get to help people overcome obstacles. It's not just special ed staff. When I talk about being accessible and when I talk about being visible, it's not that I show up when something bad happens. It's not that I show up only to the hard meetings that nobody wants to sit in unless I'm present there. And this isn't even with attorneys. This is just because, ooh, this person sounds big and scary, or this parent's demanding this and this and this. It's that I walk down the halls. My kids attend Oak Ridge schools right now. And so obviously one of the elementary schools I'm in all the time, so I can walk down the hall. But I always make it a point to be in every building at least twice a week. Not for the hard things, but to be able to walk down the hall and say good morning, good afternoon, thank you for what you're doing. What can I help you with? And that's not just SPED, because you know what? A lot of the regular ed teachers are serving special ed teachers or special ed students as well. And it's important that they get to see me and know and build that trust in me that, you know what? I know he'll show up when there is going to be a hard meeting, or if I get accused of something. You know, having to deal with somebody who's been accused of hitting an autistic child or pushing a child. Fortunately, we had video cameras, so I've done those investigations before, but that's not the only reason I show up to the schools. I want to show up because I want you to know who I am. I'm not the director of schools of Oak Ridge, but I walk around thinking, you know what, if I'm visible, I'm accessible, I can help relieve some of that pressure. Integrity is that you say it, your word is your word. And that's who I am. I'm a handshake type person. If I tell you I'm going to do something, it's done. I know that we'll probably talk about communication. I know some people like to email and hide behind email. I remember when I was a teacher, I used to say, man, I wish some people in central office get out behind that computer and hide behind that email. That's what I didn't want to be, and that's why I took the step when I went to central office. I'm not the person to hide behind an email. When I coach you, I will come see you. If there was a complaint, or if somebody has a concern, or we have obstacles and challenges in trying to understand a curriculum, work with a certain student, when I come to you, I'm coaching you. I'll send an email as a follow-up, just as a reminder. It doesn't have to be necessarily a letter of expectation or a written reprimand first thing, unless it's one of those deadly sins in education. I like to coach. I like to coach people up. I like to encourage them. That's one of my strengths. Because if you can encourage them, again, you forge that relationship that they can trust you. And so when you get that, And when you begin working and coaching with staff and parents, you build your integrity because they know, like, okay, he will show up. He's not one of those people that's just pushing out information or sending those forwards. Back in the day when email first started and everybody sent those forwards on AOL or Juno accounts. This is I want to show up and I want to talk to you in person. And how can I help you? How can we better serve our community? How can we better serve the students that come through our school system, both with and without disabilities?
So in a perfect world, directors of schools would never have to make an unpopular decision. But we do not live in a perfect world. So tell us about a time you needed to make a difficult decision as an administrator, and explain your decision-making process when you were going through that.
So as a director of schools, I've learned to understand that you're not going to touch balls, bands, or buses. Those are probably three deadly sins for a director of schools if you touch any of them. So that affects quite a bit of the community right there, whether it be sports, whether it be a bus route, or whether it be the band. And as I read up about your band, trust me, your band is phenomenal and gets to do some wonderful opportunities. I think because I was going to throw out some names there, and I was just seeing if I had wrote down that particular one, but I have some other people that I'll throw out at some point. So a difficult time or a difficult decision that I had to make. Last year, I had a second-year teacher, and I had asked the principal to non-renew this teacher after their first year because I did not feel like that they were in the best placement for a CDC setting, our lowest functioning students. And it became unsafe, and it became a whirlwind at the beginning of the year. And by Christmas time, I shut that entire classroom down. And if you've ever had to shut down a classroom or known that a classroom, especially a CDC classroom, has to be shut down, there's a lot of elements to being able to shut down a classroom because it's not just me going in and saying, sorry, this is closed. You're no longer employed. There is a lot of steps that go into that. And I'm one of those that has to plan ahead. This notebook is just this year alone. So somebody once asked me, what's in this notebook? Well, it's got my name on it for a reason. I would offer a reward. I think I even put a reward in here because it's worth any amount of money that you want, okay? Every username and password that I carry, because when you work in central office, you only have 1,000 of them, are right here. My bank accounts, my credit card accounts, so that way, whatever happens to me, right here's the book. It's orange now. It was a black book, and that's when everybody goes, oh, you're in the black book now. There's investigations in here. This is my planner. This goes everywhere with me. Most times it's stuffed in the back of my pants, in my belt loop, just because I need to know that it's hugging me at all times, because it's so important. I have to preserve what is in here. That's what my attorney for special ed said. But to go through those steps, you have to work with my direct supervisor, who was Mr. Lay, and I'm sure somebody called him, and he was one of my references. I also talked to my superintendent, who was Dr. Borchers. He was also on my reference list. It's important that my leadership know what's about to happen or my concerns, and that I have investigated this. I have all these complaints. Here's how I began documenting my discussions with this particular staff member. I've also had conversations with principals on, what can we do to try to improve this person? Well, after 1 year, when I said that we should not be non-renewing, or we should be non-renewing this person, who moved up from a TA, this principal just wanted to move somebody up and give her an opportunity because she earned it. She had put in her time. And that isn't always going to be your best staff member, the person who puts in the time. There is a place for each of us. We all have a passion. We all have a drive within us. And there is a purpose for each and every one of us. But this one wasn't for her because it became unsafe. It became intolerable for parents who were trying to transfer their kids or ask for a cross boundary or literally moving. And that was a concern to me. And that's the evidence that I took to my superintendent and also my executive director of leadership. I then had the conversation. The principal asked if I could lead that conversation because she was uncomfortable doing it. I said, at this point, you are out of the conversation. I have to lead it because you did not make the decision last year. This is my charge. I'm the one going to close this down or make the recommendation for Dr. Borchers to close this classroom down. And we did it. But I also reached out to every one of those families. When you make a mistake, or when you have to own something, even though I didn't necessarily have a part in this, I didn't hire her necessarily. The principals have that autonomy, nor do I necessarily non-renew unless they're one of my district staff. I owned it. I apologized. I called them and I said, how can I best serve your child? Because I'm going to have to move them to one of the other 3 elementary schools, which involves transportation, which involves, I need to see if you have a sibling in this school, because now I'm going to affect potentially others in your family. Fortunately, none of them had siblings. They had all moved up to the middle school, so that part didn't matter. I paid out to be able to transport by car a medically fragile child. That's okay. That's what you do. I also bused somebody who had never been on a bus, but the parents were like, you know what? I want to see if you can pull it off. Don't doubt me. I'll get you there. I'll call transportation, and I will pay the money, whatever it costs, even though we have a contract with transportation. And that part didn't cost me anything. But I reached out to every one of the families before the decision was made and before it went public, because I don't want people to hear things through the grapevine. I don't want people to find out on Facebook or Twitter or whatever social media is out there that I'm not experienced with. Those are the only 2 I know about. But I understand those are platforms for people to air out their grievances, air out their ills, no matter if they understand it or not. And I'll be honest, it was a very smooth transition. Did the parents like it at first? No. But I also guaranteed them that I was going to be the one who led the charge, that when I brought your student back into your home school, that I would lead the charge in finding the best qualified candidate for that particular classroom and for your children. And those parents really appreciated that. This past year, we hired a young man out of Knox County. Again, I stole him out of Knoxville, and he was phenomenal. And I went to this Special Olympic event where this was the first time this classroom had ever been to an event. It was bowling at the main event there in Knoxville. And the parents were just thanking me for having the courage to shut down a room so that their child did not get hurt, thanking me to have the courage to be able to reach out and call them. Not only did I call them the first time, I checked in with them monthly after that, because it was important that I understood, where is your child at? Where is your family at in this decision? It was a very tough decision for me to have to make that recommendation. I didn't officially close it, that was Dr. Borchers, but I made that recommendation and I pulled all the strings. And just like any other time that there's something major in the district, either Mr. Lay or myself, normally if it's special ed, I'm the one that's called up because they know I can handle that situation. I've been in those troubling waters where I've helped people walk out of that. We removed the staff member to be a TA for the remainder of the year. Yeah, that cost me a little bit of money since they were guaranteed a contract, but I also said your contract would be non-renewed at the end of this year. So I was very upfront with that person. They did choose to leave the system, but you got to have those tough conversations. In my world, if you are unwilling to confront behavior that is unacceptable, then you condone it. And so you have to be willing to be able to confront poor behavior. And if you don't, other staff members are going to be able to see it, and they're going to be able to look at it and say, well, you didn't deal with it on that end, so you're going to just let that slide by? Or why can't I do it? That person got away with it. And so that is something that we have ingrained in ourselves. And we talk about documentation. We don't get rid of anybody, and I don't like to use the word get rid of. That's not nice language. We don't non-renew. We don't remove somebody without proper documentation, because it's not fair when you show up at the end of the year for an evaluation or professionalism conference, and we spill out all the ills that everything you did this past year or for the past 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is. You need to show proper documentation if you're going to have those conversations. And I'll tell you what, staff members appreciate that, because not only is the opportunity to be able to motivate them and challenge them for them to set goals, but they also, sometimes they understand, you know what, I've been meaning to push myself. I've been needing to improve myself. I'm glad you said something, because maybe I didn't recognize that. I didn't see that. That comes with having good mentors.
One of the really great things about our community is our community absolutely loves the school system and is very invested in it. When things happen that people are upset about, sometimes they'll show up at board meetings and the person sitting here is the
Target.
person everybody is, target, yeah, that's the right word. So if you're sitting here, how are you going to handle, because those things happen, so how would you handle that?
Well, when I talk about being visible and being accessible, as a principal, I was able to head off a lot of negativity or negative things that ever came into my building, because guess who was standing out front unloading every child off of a bus, opening every car door with my 5th grade safety patrol. I was so accessible that if somebody needed to share a word with me or pass me a note, they knew they could find me every day. I didn't hide behind an office. I didn't hide behind a wall, a door, a computer, a phone, or anything else. I want to be accessible. When, as your director of schools, when the community sees me in your community eating at Chick-fil-A or Taco John's or over at the Food City or the Walmart, I want them to understand that I'm the director of schools and that I'm accessible if they've got something to share. That's important, is that the visibility is not just within the schools, that it's within the community. When you're speaking at the Kiwanis Club or speaking at the Lions Club or with the Rotary or any other civic organization, it's important that people understand that you can reach out to me as a person. There may be things that are concerning, and I'd rather know about it before you have to come to a board meeting and be able to share it out in front of the world, in front of all these different cameras that are available, and then it's posted on YouTube, and then it goes to Facebook, because, you know, if it's on the internet, if it's on Facebook, it's gospel. So I want to be able to be present. When I say show up, it means be present. It means be available. I want to make myself available. Let's say somebody does show up, and let's say somebody is concerned. It could be a staff member, it could be a parent, it could be a child, it could be just another stakeholder, a community member in Elizabethton. I want to listen to them, and I will make an opportunity and make time to be able to do that. We will set a date and a time. In my world, if you email me or you call me, our expectation in Oak Ridge Schools and central office is 48 hours. And that's for principals and assistant principals. In central office, we challenge ourselves to reach back out to you in less than 24 hours. And I used to coach people on communication. You get a teacher who fires off an email because they got an emotional one from a parent, and it may have had bad language in it. It may have had a lot of emotion. And I used to coach my staff and say, you know what, you do want to fire one back off, and there's times that I've been guilty of wanting to fire something right back off, because you know what, I don't like when people challenge me, but I also know I'm human, and I make mistakes, and I have to own them, and I have to apologize. I have to humble myself and be able to say, I'm sorry. But I also would suggest to you that if you will wait 24 hours and sleep on it, that message, and we used to practice this as an exercise where we would, I have a Future Leaders Academy where we mentor those who want to get into leadership in Oak Ridge Schools, and that's something I can bring to Elizabethton, because listen, you have the best resources within your school system. And so when you have a Future Leaders Academy, one of the exercises is this: I'm going to give you something that's so emotional, where I've just now gutted your entire profession and pretty much denounced you as a person in front of God himself. And I want you to write down your initial response, and then I have them wait 24 hours and write a different response, or read the same thing, or have absorbed it. And they are amazed at the message that comes out, because number one, we get in attack mode. Our defenses come up. And I want to show them that experience, because, you know, I used to be a hotshot teacher. I used to be a hotshot athletic director. All my coaches were awesome. Don't attack my coaches because your child didn't get playing time. I understand that. But not everybody can play on the same field at the same time, or on the same floor at the same time. Not everybody can be in the swimming pool. I know you got a swim team. Not everybody can be in the pool at the same time. Let's trust the coach. If they're not doing anything inexcusable, then let's trust the coach that he or she knows what he or she is doing, and we're building the foundation. So that's where I'm at with that. Did I answer that question for you?
You certainly did.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything? Follow up or anything? All right. Have you personally been involved in setting within Oak Ridge or in Anderson County their systems budget? And have you worked with your local funding body to secure funds needed for the budget?
Well, as a principal, I thought I knew everything about budgets when my budget was about $80,000. You know, when I ran this school with a little over 700 students. Of course, most of my funding came from the central office in Anderson County, so I didn't know anything about budgets when I moved over to central office. Currently, I run a $6.5 million budget. That is audited by the state, the local, and the federal government, obviously. And so IDA is scrutinized probably as much as Title and Head Start. Then those three funding bodies are interesting sometimes when they clash together and they all come together. And our preschool is actually, it's got three of those big funding bodies. So it's interesting sometimes. I understand about inventory. I know most of my budget is in salaries and benefits, and it is eaten up by salaries and benefits. And how do you find more dollars to be able to build programs? And I'll tell you what I do. I try to turn over every rock. I try to go out and try to share with any civic organization, any church, anybody that I can talk to in the community. When I go and have lunch in the community, I'm usually trying to find a group that I can sit down, and it's not to preach to. I'm not a preacher. I never got into that calling, but I will. It might sound like preaching because I'm passionate about the kids that I work with. I get to work with students with disabilities and give them access to students with and without disabilities. I want them to be included. I want people not to look at them for their disability. I want them to look at them for their abilities. And so when we talk about Special Olympics, when we talk about work-based learning, community-based learning, it's about the child's ability, not their disability. And so from that, I get to share, hey, here's what I would love to do. I just scored $4,000 off the Rotary Club to be able to put kitchens in my elementary schools, and these are mini kitchens. I needed that because at the middle school I just scored $5,000 from the Ed Foundation so that we could update the appliances and build a countertop in our Edu Kitchen. And our Edu Kitchen was where our students with disabilities and and peers would transport over to one of the middle schools and work in a kitchen-like setting. Again, developing life skills. When I need money, I'll go find it. And if I can't find it, I won't say I pull it out of my pocket, but I will find the money, all right? When I started with Oak Ridge Schools, we weren't taking anybody with disabilities anywhere unless it was on a school bus to the Special Olympics. I needed a vehicle. I was a part of Oak Ridge, Leadership Oak Ridge, and obviously there was many businessmen and women, many doctors and dentists and things like that. I used to tell them, I just need $25,000 so that I could get a van. I want to be able to take these kids somewhere. I had nothing other than a bus, and I was paying $350 plus the driver's cost. It cost me almost $500 to take kids anywhere, even if it was to the Food City, the Kroger's, the bowling alley, wherever, just to go out in the community. It's expensive. So I just said, listen, I need $25,000. Of course, I had some bank people and dentists. They wanted to contribute money to the gas. Well, I don't need gas for my car. I need gas for a vehicle. I need a vehicle first because it's not going in my car. I can't transport kids with or without disabilities. I started writing a grant. My second year, I scored $25,000. I had already went down to the local Dodge dealership and said, listen, if I brought you $25,000 cash, what would you give me in a van setting? He showed me the nicest $37,000 sticker price van and said, if you can bring me cash, I'll give it to you for $25,000. Knowing that $25,000 takes more approvals and you have to get those bidded out, he put it at $24,995. Thank you, sir. Here's $25,000 cash, done. Wrote the grant, got a TA with it who became my job coach. That summer, this is my second year now, that summer, another department decided they wanted to rid their 13-year-old van. I bought it for $1. So in one summer, I had 2 vans to be able to move kids. Well, don't give me that kind of chance. I tell you what, we moved them. We built a community-based learning and a work-based learning, and it was about having students be able to access the community. Because remember, I had $5 left. I used $1. I ended up having to send $4 back to the state, which I hate to do. Trust me. Call Kathy Rowe. Call the State Department. They know I hate to send money back under my IDEA grants. I want to spend every last dime of it. So I wrote the grant again. I turned it in. I thought, well, okay. I put those 2 at the high school so that we could mobilize students. I said, I need something for my elementary and middle school students. So I submitted, I changed up, showed some numbers, showed some data, said, here's what great things we're doing with this vehicle. They gave it to me again. Another $25,000 went down, bam, another van. 3 vans in 2 years. This was after my 3rd year. In my 4th year, I thought, you know what? It's go big or go home. And I know some of you behind me probably know what that means. And I did. I said, I can't move people in wheelchairs. I wrote $55,000 grant to the state of Tennessee and said, you know what? Y'all are discriminating. If you tell me no, then you must not like my kids in wheelchairs. I made them feel bad. I pulled on their heartstrings. They sent me $55,000, and guess what? I had a van made. I now have a bigger fleet in my special ed department than Oak Ridge Schools had before I even showed up over there. And that's something I will leave. That will be one of my legacies, along with work-based learning and the Edu-Kitchen. But I'm leaving. I have 4 vans now that is moving students all over this community. Because when we talk about work-based learning, we're talking about these kids' abilities. We're sending them to the hospital to work. We're sending them to Food City and Kroger's to work. We're sending them to local restaurants, not only to volunteer for their time, to be able to learn a skill and one day become employed, but to one day become, to be able to earn money. And I have 3 of them already. If you were to walk into Zaxby in Oak Ridge, you would immediately know who Brian is, because Brian is probably the most famous kid now working at Zaxby's, who started in my work-based learning before he graduated 2 years ago. He earns his own money, and you know what he's so proud of? He gets to put gas in his own car, and he gets to go to a bunch of UT games, football and basketball, and he is super proud. I go see him once a week because you want a shot of inspiration, go see your kids working in the community, whether they have a disability or not. Go see them working in the community. See the foundation that you built and all these teachers behind me built, and watching, because the ones that you remember the most are the hardest ones. Those ones that gave you that difficult time, that just seemed tough, that were hard to crack that egg. And those are the ones you want to know. I wonder how they got out. I wonder what they made of themselves, because you want to see them successful.
Okay, I have a question that's kind of off topic, but I've been wanting to ask it. So you're obviously super proud of the school you come from and the school system that you're already very involved in. So what made you decide to take this position here?
Well, since the last time you all, at least three of you met me, which was over 5 years ago, I have gained my doctorate. I have moved to a central office role. I've earned these reader glasses from doing that doctorate, I believe. I've probably got a few more gray hairs. The reason I want to be your next director of schools is because I love this community. And I've been here several times. I've been here many times. Most of you wouldn't know that, but there's so much to do. When you talk about God's country, I know in West Virginia, where I did my undergrad, they want to say West by God, Virginia, and call it God's country. No, this is God's country right here. You got everything you ever wanted right here, including a lot of snow in the wintertime, which we never see in Knoxville, I promise you, or Oak Ridge, because of the nuclear plant. Everything melts. It seems to melt everywhere around. It snows everywhere but Oak Ridge. I have worked my way up. When you talk about a student who could have went to the farm or to the plant, and that's what I was talking with Miss Baird. I went to high school in Marysville, Ohio, and it was just a small farming community. And in FFA, when you were in FFA, you always dreamed to be a farmer, because that's what was ingrained in you. I never lived on a farm. I earned my American degree by hand shoveling out a big old garden and then giving out all the vegetables when I was a kid. It was just a little bagger at Kroger's, at first, and then they moved me to the produce department because they said I understood vegetables and fruits. I scored 9th in the state of Ohio out of 267 people in meat judging, only because I went to Kroger's and I just studied the meat cuts, and that's how I became better at it. Nothing's been given to me. Nothing's ever been given to me. My dad is a retired Air Force, 21 years. He's retired in South Dakota. My mom, they've been divorced since I was in 5th grade. So I understand people. I understand these families and where they come from. I've slept in the back of my car because I had nothing to go on. I almost didn't go to college. And look how far I come now. And I used to tell people, I used to tell my students, don't let money be the obstacle for anything in life, whether it be school, whether it be a job, because the good Lord will provide. If you'll give a good faith effort and you'll show up and you'll work hard and you'll do the right thing, the good Lord will provide. And so to become the next director of schools for Elizabethton City, it's a great opportunity. And as I said earlier, this is not a stepping stone. I don't need 5 years so I can retire. Oak Ridge Schools takes plenty good care of everybody. That's why they steal the best. But it's also an opportunity to be able to continue my passion, to be able to continue my life's calling and building that foundation for all students, and to be able to unite a community and rally them around this important school system because they love it and they cherish Elizabethton City Schools. And I want to bring people in. And I used to, as a principal, I was on the two of the three major roads that went through Anderson County, and that was Clinton Highway and Edgemore. The only thing busier was Interstate 75, and I was 5 miles away. I used to steal everybody before they drove them to Oak Ridge. That school is sitting at 330 students now. I was pushing 700 because I said, come here, and I got to take care of them. Will you watch over my kid? Absolutely. That's why I stood out front. I had a buzzer. I was one of the first in the area to have a buzzer because of an incident that happened right before I became principal for a possible child abduction. So I had a lot of schools that wanted to come and see what that buzzer system looked like. I didn't have nothing about an SRO. I didn't have no armed guards. I didn't have to lock doors, those types of things, because I made everybody feel welcome. I made everybody feel safe. I want all your students to come to my school. And for this position, I want you to all come to my system. Whether it's tuition or not, I want you to move to Elizabethton. That's who I am. I'm the chief recruiter, not only for staff, but for the families who want to move here and live here, even though they may work in Johnson City or Kingsport or across the border over in Virginia or North Carolina or wherever they might go. All right? I want to be able to work with the area colleges, Milligan, ETSU, Northeastern State. I want to work with the universities and try to recruit and build our future teachers and send our students to these opportunities, including TCAT. Because not everybody's fit to go to college. Not everybody desires to go to college, and we all understand that. But even a career in CTE or a career in TCAT, some of those students are making more than teachers in their first year or their second year because they developed a skill. I'm built on the 7 keys. That's what we're built on in Oak Ridge Schools. And that's something I looked over your 5-year plan, which I understood. I seen that it had 15 goals on it. And it helped, it provided me some information. But we live on 7 keys. And that's what we talk about. So when you talk about somebody coming in mad or you go out to a community event, you speak to the things that you're going to unite and form that front and behind for Elizabethton City Schools. Our 7 keys look like this. And I'm not saying that this would be what Elizabethton City Schools needs, but that all students, number 1, all students would be proficient in reading at or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. Number 2, all students would be proficient in math at or above grade level by the end of grade 4. Number 3, all students would be proficient in math and ELA at or above grade level by the end of grade 6. Number 4, all students will have met the benchmarks of the ACT Aspire College Readiness by the end of 8th grade. Number 5, all students will score a 27 or higher on the ACT. Number 6, all students will be fluent in financial literacy upon high school graduation. And number 7, all students will participate in AP, dual enrollment, dual credit, military preparation, industry certification, or work-based learning by high school graduation. And that's what we speak to. You keep it simple, and you share that, you're transparent about that data. And that's what this system needs, all right? And I want to come and build upon what Dr. Gardenauer's already built here. I think it's important. I'm not here to tear down any walls or to send people packing. That's not what I'm about. I'm here to coach and work because you know what? Every one of these people in this room right here have a passion for something. And they're making a difference in a child's life. And that's what's important.
We got, I'm going to try to get a couple more questions in because I don't want to go over too much longer. So if you are tasked with the position of Director of Schools, what type of people will you need to help you build your support team to be successful?
I need people who will show up, whether it's COVID or non. COVID hit us, and I talked with my leadership team, and I shared, are you going to be the carrot, the egg, or the coffee bean? And if you've never read that book by John Gordon, then are you going to let what's happening in this world soften you? Are you going to, and that's the carrot, are you going to let what's happening in this world harden you all the way around, and that's the egg? Are you going to let what's happening in this world just let it brew and let the inside of you just brew out and just pour out your passion, and that's the coffee bean? And so I called them, I said to my staff, I called them this. I said, are you going to be scared? Are you going to be a couch sitter who are just going to wait for direction? Or are you going to be a game changer? And a game changer is somebody who gives a good, honest effort, a good faith effort. Because in the end, if you're going to come after anybody, I want the community for special ed to come after me, because I try to lead the charge. I know I only gave you 5 references. I can give you plenty of references. Call any one of those principals. So many thank yous from the community and from the principals for stepping up. I wasn't the director of schools. I'm not the director of schools of Oak Ridge, but you had to step up. This was no time to go hide and wait on direction, because stuff was changing hourly, it seemed like, and not even daily. And so sometimes I had to go back and rework how we were going to program and how we were going to serve. It was about survival the last 9 weeks of school. I've been, and I want to say the word preaching, I've been coaching the last 4 weeks of school. It isn't going to be survival when we start school in July. It's going to be about all go. We've got to get better. And I took 30 and 40-year veteran teachers who never thought they would ever have to have an opportunity to teach via video conferencing or send an email to reach out to a kid, who loved the opportunity because I said, go try it. You can't fail. I promise you, it's not going to look the same because we're not all in a big old meeting. I was able to hold weekly school meetings, weekly group meetings. I had a resource group, a CDC group, an SLP group, OTPT group, school psychs. I broke it down so that I could meet with them individually and we could share information. And all they're asking is, wow, what a way to connect. And the administrators were so impressed that it was like, wow, you didn't run and hide. There's nothing to run and hide from other than maybe COVID. But I just said, let's go. Let's do this. Let's make a good faith effort, because they're not going to come after you. So what do I need? I need people to show up. I need people to have a heart for kids. I want them to come and just pour out their passion. I want them to be compassionate to children. Be kind. Let's understand where some of our families come from. One of the things I did as a principal, I loaded every one of my teachers up on a school bus, drove them around the area that we served. I have people who live in big homes. I have people who are so disconnected because, you know what, they've never had to deal with the difficulties that some of our families deal with each and every day. That was eye-opening. It was a tearjerker for some. But I could tell them, because I was so plugged into my community, I could tell them where all the kids lived because I rode the bus. If there was an issue on the bus, how do you fix an issue on the bus? You ride the bus and you set the example. You show them how to properly sit and not have to hit each other 20 times on a 2-minute ride to cross the street. And you have a conversation. You get to understand them, where they come from, their moms, their dads, what do they do or don't do. You hear bad stories, but they develop that relationship with you. And so I used to share, and I probably said this 5 years ago, everything I owned had Cheeto marks or pizza marks, because if you hugged one kindergartner, you had to hug them all in the hallway, because they all want to hug, because you know what? They don't know the ills of the world. They're just sweet and innocent, and they just want somebody to care for them. And sometimes they don't have that. And so when we talk about what I need leaders at central office who will be visible and accessible. I want them to go out to the schools, not when bad things are happening, but to help us overcome the obstacles that our principals and our teachers and our TAs and our cafeteria managers and our custodians, all of them are facing. Because if we aren't out there in tune with what is going on in our buildings, then how can we run a system? And so we would have a weekly meeting so that we can discuss what is going on in the different departments. And that would probably be every Monday morning or whatever day we choose. You would have weekly communication. You would have weekly communication so that you would not have to be surprised at a board meeting. Sure, I can give you a monthly update. As a teacher, I put out a monthly newsletter. As a principal, I put out a daily bulletin. Now, as a supervisor of special education, I put out to all my staff just a weekly bulletin, which is just a front and a back. It doesn't have to be 20 pages, but the last thing I want you to be is surprised in a board meeting because you didn't hear it first out of my mouth.
Thank you so much. Veronica has a question. I'm going to let her speak to you after we close up. Also, if anybody here just wants to meet Dr. Hebrard, it's always wonderful to see you. Thank you, and be safe going back to your vacation with your family. Thank you so much, and we'll give you a few minutes to talk to everybody else.
All right. Thank you so much again for the opportunity. You all have a great day.
Well, Mr. Van Huss, hello.
Hello.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
You've had to sit and wait the longest, so I'm sure your day's been delightful.
Not nearly as bad as yours, I'm sure. So
Our day has-
I got to sit outside for quite a large portion of that day. So
Well, you've had a beautiful day for
Yes.
it. Well, again, you know all of us, and we know you. Do you know Veronica?
I don't think so.
Hi, I'm Veronica. I'm the new student liaison.
Great.
So I'm very excited.
Congratulations.
To be here. Thank you.
She just jumped right into the deep end of the pool today, so.
Excited.
All right, so just pretend we don't know you.
Okay.
And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Of course, my name is Richard Van Huss. I'm from Elizabethton, born and raised here. Went to graduate from Elizabethton High School, attended the University of Tennessee, and received my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Decided that wasn't, my passion. That wasn't where my passion was, so went back to school and entered the education field. Personally, I have a wife, 2 children. My wife is a teacher at Westside Elementary School. She's the phys ed teacher there. I have a son, Bryce. He's 16 years old. He will be a junior at Elizabethton High School. And my daughter, Bailey, is 14. Actually, today's my son's 16th birthday. So feel free to wish him happy birthday from me, too. No, and my daughter's 14. She'll be a freshman, so she's about to step into the big pond there at Elizabethton. But I attend Oak Street Baptist Church. Faith is a big part of who I am. I'm very active in my church family. Very important to me, and we've been meeting for the last couple of weeks, which has been great to be back with my church family, so that's been nice. I'm also a member of the Lions Club. I'm on the board of directors of that club as well, so spend a lot of time with that community organization. And, it's somewhat of a hobby, I guess. It's really unusual for a supervisor to be a coach, but I've spent several years coaching different sports at Elizabethton, and that is kind of a passion. It's kind of something that I've done on my own time, so it's been great for me and unique in the fact that I've still been able to keep those relationships with students that typically you kind of lose when you move further on up in administration. So that's been a real blessing for me. So that's a little bit about me.
So describe what you do in your current position on a daily basis. What
Okay.
aspects of this role do you enjoy the most, and what do you enjoy the least?
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm currently the Assistant Director of Schools, and my main focus right now is special education, and I've been in this role for the last 2.5 years. I've learned quite a bit in that role, just the ins and outs of all the legal aspects of special education. It's really helped me develop as a professional. It was always one of those areas that I wasn't quite familiar with, wasn't comfortable with, per se, and I have much better understanding and appreciation for all that's involved there. You talk about individual plans for each and every student, trying to meet their needs. It's a big responsibility, and just the appreciation that I've gathered and earned from the teachers both ways. The respect that I've gotten from them and the respect I have for the job that they've done. So a typical day for me is supporting them in whatever aspect they need. If they need me to attend a meeting, or if there are resources that I can possibly obtain for them to help make their job easier to meet the needs of students. I'm also the safety officer, so I'm heavily involved in many aspects, everything from the Raptor system, which we're currently about to update, which is our visitor management system. I'm also involved with school safety plans. Principals also provide to me drill dates and all those kinds of things that we have to provide for the state. Those are probably the 2 biggest things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, just fielding questions from faculty and staff, mainly pertaining to the world of special education. But again, over my career, I've been over every department here, with the exception of transportation. So and budget. I've not been over finance. So but I've had experience in that as well. So that's another big part of the job, is dealing with the day-to-day budgetary items that involve special education as well.
How many teachers do you supervise, and how many students would you just estimate that fall under your purview?
Sure. So there's about 25 teachers. I'm also over the Response to Intervention program, the RTI program, so the coaches also fall under me. But again, we're site-based managed, so the day-to-day supervision falls to the principals, but those are the individuals that are under my under my departments, I guess you would say. Student-wise, we have about 460, 470 students in special education currently, and there's probably district-wide around 200 to 250 students in our intervention programs in the various in Tier 2 or Tier 3.
We kind of touched on what you do. What's the best part of your job, and what is the hardest part of your job?
Best part of the job, hardest part. The best part of the job is just interacting with people. I'm a people person. I enjoy doing what I can to help. I have a servant's heart, so if I'm looking for ways that I can help make teachers, students, other administrators trying to make their jobs easier and better. I really enjoy that just the interaction in general. The hardest part, was that the other one, the hardest? Having to say no, because there's always needs, and having to weed through budget constraints, personnel, just resources in general, and having to say we really just can't do that right now. But we try to find other ways to maybe help people out when we can't give them exactly what they want. So that's difficult.
The director of schools is undeniably the leader of the system. Define what leadership and integrity mean to you.
Leadership. So leadership to me would be the ability to have a vision for the organization, whatever it may be, and to be passionate about that vision and being able to take that passion and share it with others. I think that's the key part. And also not being so entrenched in your own vision, but taking the input and advice from others, and maybe that vision changes somewhat. But having that passion and be able to communicate it to others, I think is leadership. I think integrity is also a part of leadership as well, and the ability to form consensus with others. I mentioned earlier about the servant leadership aspect. I truly believe that as supervisors, as administrators, we're here to serve others. It's not about us. It never has been. It's about what we can do to, first and foremost, meet the needs of our students. And that's serving the students, that's serving the teachers, that's serving your fellow administrators, other supervisors, and being willing to take that input from all of those people and make decisions. Now, make no mistake, I understand the role that this is. I understand the director of schools role. I've been here for 14 years. I've had a front row seat to the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I certainly understand all of those components of that. And at the end of the day, I understand that tough decisions have to be made, and I'm willing to make those decisions and stand behind those. And there's going to be times that I'm wrong. I don't have all the answers, and I won't be afraid to admit that if I don't, and I'll look for support from others to get those answers. I think it's important leadership. Leaders build teams around them, that people that are smarter themselves, that are experts in certain areas, more so than themselves, and they're willing to take that input from those. Leadership is also the ability to take criticism and be able to have other individuals that may disagree with you and not taking that personal. I think it's important to create an environment where people feel comfortable sharing their opinions with you, even if it is opposed to your own. And at the end, being able to bring all of those viewpoints together for one direction. Integrity. Integrity, I think, is at the core for me. Integrity is having a strong moral code, and that is the center of everything you do, every decision you make, and you stand behind that at all times. And every decision you make, that's at the core of that decision. You're not going to deviate from that. Integrity is also the ability to self-reflect, look at yourself, and again, admit when you're wrong in those times that you are, and be a constant, a lifelong learner, be looking for ways to improve and get better, and building relationships with others, and again, creating that environment where other people are comfortable sharing their opinion with you without fear of retribution and things like that. So that's who I am as a person. I'm a strong moral person. I am, my faith is very, very important to me. So it's hard to separate decisions I make from that as well. So.
So in a perfect world, directors of schools would never have to make an unpopular decision. We don't live in a perfect world. So tell us about a time that you needed to make a difficult decision as an administrator, and explain the decision-making process you used when facing that difficult decision.
Okay. So, again, I've been over many programs. One particular program, I won't mention the program because I don't want it to get.
Yeah, you're kind of in a bad spot.
Yeah, yeah. So, but anyway, in this particular program, there were 2 employees that needed to be disciplined, and the discipline was fairly. The actions were fairly significant, and they were going to require termination. And both of these individuals, I knew their families from the community, so that's very, very difficult. So, you know, you go through, you play all those scenarios out. You know, what's this person going to think? How's this going to react? You know, what's this going to cause, and things like that. But at the end of the day, every time I've been in a situation like that, I've always had this one thought pops in my mind. There's a reason that I'm in this situation. I'm having to deal with this situation right now. And it's not of my own doing. It's because of the actions of others. And because of that, I'm going to use the moral compass that I talked about before and do what's best for the organization. Because anything we do, if it's not what's best for kids, then we either, number one, don't need to do it, and we need to change direction. So with all that in mind, I did go through and recommend termination for the 2 individuals, but I handled it in a way that when they see me, they still speak to me. Their families don't throw rocks at me and things like that. So, but those are very difficult decisions when you have to make decisions that are best for the organization that may have negative impacts and a negative impact on those around in the community.
Well, you know this because, as you said, you have had a front row seat. We know that when difficult decisions are made and people are upset,
Yes.
this room gets full, and whoever's sitting here is the popular person. So if you're sitting here and all of that is directed at you, how are you going to handle it?
Again, just like you said, I've been here for 14 years, so I've understood what that takes. And over that time period with other situations, you know, I've developed thick skin as well. Again, my focus is going to be what's best for students and what's best for the organization. And at the end of the day, every decision you make, chances are half the people are going to think it's great and half the people aren't, and I understand that. And I'm willing, again, to focus and do what's best for the organization, the students, the staff, and the group as a whole. So I will answer honestly. I will look people in the eye and say, here's the decision that I've made and here's why. And, you know, at the end of the day, the buck stops here, and I understand that, and I'm ready to accept that responsibility.
Would you go back, just talk about the process? Okay, you're in a tough decision. What kind of process would you use to get to your final decision?
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to have all of the information to begin with, and so that's going to require an investigation, potentially and have others involved with that, whether it be building administrators, other supervisors, and then collect all of that information. You also have to provide due process for those individuals that are involved. You have to give them an opportunity to respond to the allegations or the situation and get their side of that. And then you take all of that information and you have to process, and at the end of the day, you have to make determinations, especially if one side says this and another says something else. You have to make a decision based on what you think is accurate. And anytime that a decision like that would be made, I would want input, again, from others, not just the people that did the interviews, but the leadership team as well. And take all of that information into account and then make a decision. And again, I understand that decision lies with me. I will get input from others, but the final decision would be mine. So I think it's imperative that you're fair to everyone involved and you collect all the information. That's the two key components for me.
So have you personally been involved in setting this school system's budget, and have you worked with the local funding body to secure the funds needed for a budget?
Okay. I have been involved in setting budgets. In every role that I've had here at the central office, I've been involved with a budget of some sort, whether it be the Early Learning Center. I've been responsible for the federal programs budget, which involves all the title programs. I've been involved, of course, with special ed as well. There's always a budget that is involved with safety, school safety. There are grant funding options and things like that that I've written grants for to secure funding, schools, again, for school safety. I've also been involved with capital projects and worked with city council. Obviously, that's the lead for that has always been the director of schools, but I've been involved in that process as well. And as you know, over time, we've received quite a bit of funding for some major renovations and additions to the school system, which, I'm very proud to be a part of. So yes, I have been involved with that.
So if you're tasked with the director of schools position for Elizabethton, what types of people will you need to build your support team to help you become a successful director?
I mentioned earlier, I will have no problem admitting that I don't have all the answers. And I think a good leader is going to surround themselves with people that are smarter or have more experience in areas that they maybe don't. So I would look for people that fit those roles. I would look for people that are high integrity people, people that I feel like I can trust their judgment. I'm going to look for people that are loyal to the school system and the community, that have the school system's best interest at heart. And again, those, you can't, there's no substitute for experience. So we're going to look for people that put us in the best position to meet the needs of the students in our system, whether it be selecting resources or just providing guidance, professional development, any of those aspects that may be required. So I'm looking for smart people that we can trust and have the same moral and ethical standards that I do. I've answered all the questions, right?
You did. I just like to look around to see if anybody's got anything on their mind. Anybody? I don't want to cut anybody off.
I'll come back at the end.
Okay. You can go ahead. You're good.
Well, I need to work on wording it, so I don't
Okay.
do that.
All
same
right.
thing I did
I'm not
last
going to
time.
get you in there too early. I appreciate that. So tell us about a time you failed at something as a leader. How did you handle it? What did you learn? And how would you handle that situation now?
Only one.
Well, you got quite a bit of time, so are we going alphabetically or numerically? You tell me.
Yeah. So one that sticks out in my mind was early on in my career. Again, I mentioned I was graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. So in school, I was always told, you're too smart to be an educator. You need to do something else than education. And as I mentioned earlier, that wasn't my passion, so I went back to school, earned my master's in education, and was teaching at Elizabethton High School. And so again, I'm an engineering student. I have had all these math courses. I've got this math gig. This is going to be a piece of cake. So one particular day, I think we were factoring polynomials or something like that, and so I teach the lesson and give a quiz at the end, and the lesson was great. I mean, it was a high quality lesson. It had all the components. It was fantastic. But the quiz results certainly didn't indicate that. So just every student bombed. So naturally, it's like, well, again, the lesson was great. I don't understand how they must have all slept through it. They just weren't paying attention. They're just not very smart. All these things running through my mind. And then that little voice in the back of my head said, what did you have to do with that? So I had a heart-to-heart with myself, and the reality was I hadn't done a good job. I hadn't prepared the way that I needed to prepare those students for that lesson. And so I learned a very valuable lesson early on that regardless of what the task is, you need to be prepared, whatever that requires. You need to put in the time to be prepared. So that particular situation has served me very well moving forward in the different roles that I've had. But that was it was a very humbling experience, and I haven't soon forgotten it. So.
Veronica, you want to ask the question that you were planning to ask, and then you can ask your second question?
Yes,
Okay.
perfect. Okay, so as the student liaison, it is my job to speak on behalf of the students and voice their concerns to the board, and also make sure that their voices are heard. With this in mind, I would like to know, in what ways will you honor and value student voice as the superintendent?
As I mentioned earlier, students, I mean, that's why we're all here. That's why we have these roles and positions. That's why the school system exists, to meet the needs of students. So that is very, very important to me. And I'm going to promote within the schools that there are opportunities for students' voices to be heard. I'm going to be available. I'm going to be out there as well. And I would like to set up a situation where I meet with students, especially at the high school and junior high level, periodically, when an amount that's appropriate, to get feedback from them as well on the things that we're doing. I think the addition of your role with this board is extremely helpful. So I'll rely on you quite a bit and get your opinion and ideas about things that we're doing. But at the end of the day, we have to find ways to help students find their passion, whether that be in an extracurricular activity, a particular subject area. Maybe my son, had we not had the aviation program at Elizabethton High School, he would not be on the path he is today. He's decided he wants to be a pilot. So many years ago, when we added that program, I'm seeing the direct benefit of that for my son. So I'm a big proponent in finding, we have to find ways for students to plug in, whatever that may be, whether it's a club, extracurricular, or a club. So we have to find ways to make students feel valuable and find their passion. So that's a big thing to me, is continuing to find those avenues, again, whether it be extra classes that we're able to add. And we've kicked around several ideas. I know there's consideration for ROTC at the next board meeting. We've also talked about welding. There's just a host of things that we would love to add to be able to provide students with opportunities. So.
Thank you. So then I guess my other question would be, when you're making decisions and there's choices that have to be made, there's going to be a lot of sources of input from various different aspects, so students, community members. How will you kind of rank and hold those opinions in your own decision?
Sure. I think in certain situations it may be dependent on what the particular, what the nature of the situation is. Certain curricular things, obviously we may lean a little bit more on instructors and students more so than maybe the community. If it's, things that may affect the community, portions, for instance, some of the Bartleby projects and things that go on. At that point, the community input is huge, in those aspects. So I think it just kind of depends on the situation, but everyone's voice is important, whether it be parents, students, community members, teachers, other supervisors, administrators. Everyone has a unique perspective, and I want to hear those perspectives, because everyone's not in this exact same situation or had the same experiences that I have, and I understand and value the experiences that others have had. So that's the kind of culture that I would want to create here, is a culture where people feel comfortable sharing and want to be a part of what goes on and want to provide input and feel comfortable doing that.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Van Hess, I would hate if you didn't get to answer Dr. May's favorite question about COVID and starting school. So I'll let you word that however you want to, because heaven forbid you don't get to say, I don't know either, and we're going to go, we don't either, but
want to have any dice? We're just going to.
Plead that
So
might
we
as
don't-
well.
With COVID, it's more what we don't know than what we do know. And
That's right.
so today, we know, that the direction has been all over the board. And I know we have a task force, but at this moment, if you had to start kind of helping the board shape up a plan to resume school safely, how would you do that?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, health and safety of everyone involved, students and staff as well, has to be the key focus. So we would rely heavily on the guidance of the local health officials, CDC guidance. We'd take all those things into consideration, and yes, we have already started having those discussions. I can tell you that my group, the special education directors in Northeast Tennessee, we have a conference call. We had it once a week for about a month, and now we've gone to every other week just because it's the summer and people are in and out. But we've had those bouncing ideas off of each other because as a region, we're all in this together. And, I think that there's, safety in numbers per se, that if we're all kind of in the same, have the same idea or plans moving forward, I think that we're all in a better position. And what I mean by that is, again, it's changing every day. So we're going to have contingency plans for, infection, the rates, what the recovery rates are, and all those things involved. So it's key to get input from all those individuals. And again, we've already had those conversations. We actually yesterday had a conference call with all of just the supervisors in the region as well. So SPED directors are doing that. Supervisors in general are. We're all bouncing the same questions and concerns and ideas off of each other moving forward. So we have to make a decision that protects the safety and health of our students. So and the healthcare professionals are at the key of that, at the center of that. Let's just be honest, there's also economic considerations there as well. I mean, if school doesn't start, it's going to be very hard to keep the economy going as well, but we have to be able to do it in a way where the health and safety of our people is at the forefront.
Anybody else have any other questions?
If you had had to list your greatest asset that you would bring to the position of superintendent, if you could answer that first, and then in fairness, I'm going to ask liability right after that. So first, I want to hear the asset and your strength, and then your weakness.
Okay.
And just in your own mind, what do you bring to us?
I think it's my ability to build relationships and again gather input from individuals around me. I don't have a problem admitting again that I don't know it all. So being able to have good relationships with everyone in the organization is important to me, and again, I want that input from others. So that's my number one thing is my relationship, the ability to build relationships.
Can you give a concrete example of where you've done that to support your current role?
Sure. So again, when I stepped into the role of special education director, my knowledge was, albeit very minimal. So I've relied on several of the teachers. I won't name them by name, but people in the system that I respect, and every single member of the staff has, again, a different perspective and different set of experiences that I've been able to learn from, all the way from the 25-year veteran to someone that has less than a year of experience. So I've had those opportunities to do that. And yes, I'm the special education supervisor, but the conversations and the communications I've had with them are very similar. Like, look, you tell me what you think is the best solution in this situation, because I want to know because the experiences that you may have had. So I have those conversations daily with individuals. Even the administrative secretary that's responsible for that program, I've relied heavily on that individual as well to provide information, because she's been in that role much longer than I have. So again, it's not a thing like, well, I'm in charge, so I can't ask people I can't show a weakness that I don't know something. I don't look at that as a weakness. I just look at that as a strength that hey, I want to know your opinion. because of your experience and expertise.
Okay. So relationships and the special ed. So as far as that's your strengths, but so if you had to self-assess what your biggest liability is, weakness, what would that be?
Sure.
For this position?
Okay.
Not.
I mentioned it earlier. Sometimes I have a hard time saying no, and that's a situation that I constantly work on. And a situation where I may say no, I always try to look for something that I can give that person. I may not be able to give them the answer that they want, and sometimes I just tell them that I can't. I know this is not what you want to hear, but here's the answer. But I always counteract that. What I've tried to do and learned over time is try to give them something, some kind of support, empathy, let them know that you care, and try to find a solution. Maybe somewhere down the road you can say yes, or you can provide what they need, or you can give them the answer that they want. But sometimes that's hard to do, and you end up being in a situation where you don't want to end up in a situation where you make a promise that you can't keep. So that's a difficulty for me. So.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for us?
Oh,
yeah, go for it. No.
So, your experience was mainly at the high school teaching, and as assistant principal, then you moved to officer chief, served many roles.
Mm-hmm.
The elementary school, you never taught or been a principal. So what are you going to do as director to ensure that we're doing what we need to do for the elementary schools with test scores, make sure we got the right curriculum and stuff like that?
Sure. Well, I have been over the early learning center, so I went from the high school as young as you could go, and that was a culture shock for sure. What I would say is my wife's an elementary teacher, so she's going to tell me all I need to know about elementary school. Not that she doesn't already. No, I think they're the experts. I'm going to reach out to them and say, what can I do to help you be better at your job? Again, I'm going to have to rely on others to help with the curriculum and things like that, although I've been extremely involved in that. I'm part of the curriculum team now. That we're developing a new benchmark assessment with the other districts in the region, and the whole region is going to adopt this benchmark assessment. So I'm involved in that now. So again, we're going to rely on our building principals and the teachers in those areas to provide input for us to make a good informed decision when necessary.
I've got a quick question, Richard. I know you've been involved with a lot of the capital projects. We have some ongoing capital projects now that are in the mix.
Yes.
And need to be done before school starts.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And here we are, June. How would you approach that and try to get those projects done in a timely manner?
Yeah, so we just need to roll our sleeves up and get in there and find out, if they're, what the delays are at this point. If it's, sometimes I know, we've had issues with the fire marshal and, getting certain aspects of projects approved. But again, that's in my wheelhouse. That's something that I'm very, very comfortable with. I have, I've worked with three different local architects, so I'm familiar with all of those individuals. I'm familiar with the projects, in general about what's going on, and we're just going to have to get in there and push if it requires using some of our staff to get those things moving. But that'd be the first call I would make is with the architects of all those projects and find out where we are and try to get things moving, because you're right. I mean, it's right around the corner in some form or fashion, the start of school. So yes, we need to get those rolling.
Anything for us?
I guess I would just be curious, maybe collectively or individually, what you think the key component that you're looking for in this director, what you think that key attribute is.
Well, what I'm looking for right now is somebody to hit the ground running, because there's a lot of challenges facing us here in the very near future.
Yes, there are.
So, I know we've got long-range plans and issues that
Sure.
we need to deal with, but right now, we need to get somebody to hit the ground running.
Absolutely.
Am I allowed to put my input on that?
Honey, you're sitting up here, you bet.
I'd like to see someone that'll really help bring our school into the future and really keep us moving forward and be above and beyond the other schools in our area.
We have some great things to address that in the works, so.
I would like to see someone look to expand all opportunities for our students. I know when we were in high school, CTE classes, or everybody was going to a four-year college, and we kind of dropped a lot of CTE classes. I'd like to see us get back to teaching some of the trade skills, push certifications down to high school level, where if a student doesn't want to go to a post-secondary institution, they can leave the high school with the skills they need to get a job and be a good employee. And
Right.
So just broaden the opportunities for our students.
Understand.
I echo all that. I'm looking for passionate leadership.
I mean, just echoing all that, just a unifying person to move us forward. Sure.
One of the things, I know that we have had a very aggressive director search, and I'm going to be unapologetic in my reasoning why. Because I want somebody, when school starts, I want the person who's our director to be sitting there when school starts. I didn't want to put an interim in to try to figure it out and then hire somebody who's having to start 2 months down the road. So that is why we have moved at such an aggressive pace, because we're in uncharted waters.
Sure.
What I'm looking for is a leader who will lead. I want somebody who will listen, but I want somebody who will make a decision, stand firm, knowing that they made the right decision, and to not let too many things sway them that they, can't handle that. We have a phenomenal school system.
Yes, we do.
And, I've sat and watched Veronica all day, and that's a reminder of why we're pushing forward. I never want us to stop. That's not who we are. And I don't want us to ever go backward, and I want us to keep pushing forward. And all of us have different things that we're really excited about, and it all comes together to make a really great team. And I want our kids, I want people to choose to live in Elizabethton because they want to send their kids here, because they know they're going to prepare them for whatever. And we don't have a cookie cutter that we want our graduates to look like. I just know I want them to walk out of our building ready to go, whatever that is. And so I want a leader who is ready to go, all right, off we go. And that's just what I'm looking for. And I thank the community for just allowing us to go at such a quick pace and trusting that our reasoning was just to get somebody here as quickly as we can, because if it was a normal school year and everything we knew what we were expecting, I would have relaxed the pace. But I feel like the best thing that we can do for the person who's going to be sitting here is to get them in there as quickly as possible. So maybe that will explain why we've done this the way we have, but also I just really want this person to be as prepared and ready to go, and for the board to be 100% behind them. Just whomever that is, all 5 of us, 6 of us will be ready to go. So anything else? We got 5 minutes if you want to chit-chat about anything.
I would ask
or-
when you're going to make your decision, but I know the answer to that too, so.
Oh, yeah, we've got that right now. I figure we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to pull a name out of the hat, and there we go. So we are going to let you chat with everybody. We did really well on time. I believe we're going to have, we called it a called meeting, but we're not going to be making any decisions. We're just going to talk because we have to decompress and think things through. So I think we decided we were going to start that at 4:30. Is that correct? Is that what we said? 4:30? I'm going to say 4:30 because I think that's what we said. So everybody can get up, move around, walk around, chit-chat, and we will sit back here or sit somewhere and talk for a few minutes. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.